World War II was the biggest war in history. It lasted for 6 long years, from 1939 to 1945. This was not just a fight between armies, it was a total war. It touched every continent and ocean, pulling nations from all corners of the globe into its devastating grasp. The conflict involved more than 100 million people from over 30 countries. The scale of the fighting, the new technologies of destruction, the sheer number of lives lost. Understanding this war is crucial because it didn't just end, it completely reshaped the world we live in today, creating new countries, new alliances, and new rules for how nations should behave. The importance of World War II cannot be overstated. It was a struggle between two main groups of countries. The story of World War II really begins at the end of World War I. In 1919, the Treaty of Versailles was signed. This treaty was meant to bring peace, but for Germany, it felt like a punishment. Germany also lost a lot of its land and was forbidden from having a large army. This made many German people feel angry and humiliated. In this climate of anger and economic hardship, a new leader rose to power in Germany, Adolf Hitler. He was the head of the Nazi Party. Hitler was a powerful speaker who promised to make Germany strong again. He told the German people that they were a superior race, and he quickly began to rearm the country in secret. Meanwhile, other countries were also becoming more aggressive. In 1931, Japan invaded Manchuria, a region of China. The world's leading democracies were slow to react. By the late 1930s, Adolf Hitler's ambitions were growing clearer. He had already taken over Austria in 1938. Parts of Czechoslovakia followed. They met Hitler in Munich and agreed to hand over the Sudetenland. This was the high point of appeasement. Hitler then took the rest of Czechoslovakia a few months later. His next target was Poland. He demanded the return of Danzig. In August 1939, he signed a non-aggression pact with Joseph Stalin. It shocked the world, rivals agreeing. The pact included a secret plan to divide Poland. For Hitler, it avoided a two-front war. The final moment came on September 1, 1939. Without a formal declaration, German forces stormed into Poland. The German army used a new method called blitzkrieg, lightning war. Panzers, German tanks, broke through Polish defenses. Stuka dive bombers attacked from the sky, spreading terror and confusion. The Polish army fought bravely but were outnumbered and outgunned. Britain and France had promised to protect Poland. On September 3, 1939, Britain and France declared war on Germany. After the fall of Poland, there was a strange, quiet period for several months. It was called the Phony War, but in spring 1940 the German blitzkrieg was unleashed. In April, Germany invaded Denmark-Norway. Then in May, Hitler launched his main attack. German armies swept through Belgium, the Netherlands, Luxembourg. They bypassed the Maginot Line. Allied armies were caught by surprise. German forces trapped the BEF and French soldiers at Dunkirk. Miracle of Dunkirk rescue effort, a flotilla of small boats crossing the channel, fleet of over 800 boats, fishing boats, yachts, pleasure craft. Over 9 days more than 338,000 troops were rescued, but France fell, June 22, 1940. With France defeated, Britain stood alone. Winston Churchill vowed Britain would never surrender. The RAF fought back with courage. Radar technology aided them. Spitfires, Hurricanes. In June 1941, Vertical Bar Hitler made a decision that would change the course of the war. He broke his pact with Stalin and launched Operation Barbarossa, a massive surprise invasion of the Soviet Union. It was the largest land invasion in history. At first, the German army made huge advances. They also captured millions of Soviet soldiers, but the harsh Russian winter arrived early. Determined Soviet resistance and brutal weather stopped the German advance, marking a critical turning point on the Eastern Front. Another major turning point occurred on December 7, 1941. Japan launched a surprise attack on Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. The very next day, the United States declared war on Japan and officially entered World War II. A key turning battle was the Battle of Midway in June 1942. American codebreakers had discovered Japan's plan to attack the island of Midway. In the fighting that followed, American planes sank 4 of Japan's best aircraft carriers. Japan's navy never fully recovered. On the Eastern Front, the Battle of Stalingrad, late 1942 to early 1943, was decisive. Fighting was brutal. Soldiers battled street by street and house by house. After months of starvation and freezing, the German army surrendered in February 1943. It was a catastrophic defeat for Germany. The tide had finally turned against the Axis powers. The leaders of the major powers played a huge role in shaping the war. For the Axis, the most dominant figure was Adolf Hitler, the Führer of Germany. His partner in Europe was Benito Mussolini, the Duce of Italy. In Japan, the Emperor Hirohito was the figurehead and Hideki Tojo the military leader who pushed for war. These three main Axis leaders shared a belief in military power, national expansion, and the suppression of individual freedoms. They ruled through fear and propaganda, demanding total loyalty from their people. On the Allied side, Winston Churchill became Prime Minister in 1940. Franklin D. Roosevelt led the United States through the Great Depression and into the war. Joseph Stalin was a brutal tyrant who had killed millions of his own people, but his country bore the heaviest burden of the war against Germany. Despite their deep political differences, Churchill, Roosevelt, and Stalin, the Big Three, had to work together to defeat the Axis. They coordinated massive operations that would eventually defeat the Axis. Their decisions shaped battle plans, home front policies, and the post-war world. Often these choices had enormous human cost. But beyond the leaders, millions of ordinary people would bear the brunt of the war. Their stories define the civilian experience of World War II. World War II was not just a war fought by soldiers, it was a war that deeply affected ordinary people everywhere. In cities across Britain, people lived under the constant threat of the Blitz, the intense bombing campaign by the German Luftwaffe. At night, cities would go dark during blackouts. People would spend nights sleeping in air raid shelters or in underground stations. Children were often evacuated from the cities to the countryside for safety, separated from their families for years. Despite the fear and destruction, a sense of community spirit, the Blitz spirit, emerged. In German-occupied Europe, life was filled with fear and hardship. People who opposed the Nazis were arrested, tortured, and killed by the secret police. Food and fuel were strictly rationed, many people went hungry. Resistance movements grew in France, Poland, Yugoslavia, and elsewhere. Ordinary men and women risked their lives to sabotage railways, publish illegal newspapers, and help stranded Allied airmen escape. Their bravery tied down thousands of German troops. The war devastated the Soviet people. The German invasion was incredibly cruel. Entire villages were burned to the ground, millions of civilians were killed or died from starvation. During the siege of Leningrad, the city was surrounded for nearly 900 days. Over 1 million people starved to death. For Jewish people in Europe, the war brought the Holocaust. People were transported in cattle cars to camps like Auschwitz. By 1944 vertical bar, the Axis powers were being pushed back on all fronts. The final chapter in Europe began on June 6, 1944, vertical bar, D-Day. It was the largest sea invasion in history. Over 156,000 Allied soldiers landed on the beaches of Normandy, America, Britain, Canada, and other nations. Despite heavy German fire and many casualties, the Allies established a foothold. From Normandy, Allied armies began their slow, bloody fight across France, liberating Paris in August 1944, pushing onwards toward the German border. While the Western Allies advanced from the west, the Soviet Red Army pushed from the east. In the winter of 1944, Hitler launched one last desperate attack, the Battle of the Bulge. It failed. By spring 1945, Allied and Soviet forces were closing in on Berlin from both sides. On April 30, 1945, Adolf Hitler committed suicide. A few days later, on May 8, 1945, Germany officially surrendered. VE Day, massive celebration in London, Paris, Moscow. However, the war in the Pacific was still raging. The United States planned to invade Japan but feared millions of casualties. On August 6, 1945, Hiroshima. On August 9, 1945, Nagasaki. The destruction was immense. On August 15, 1945, he announced surrender to his people. On September 2, 1945, the formal surrender documents were signed. World War II was finally over. The end of World War II left the world completely changed. It is estimated that over 60 million people died, more than half of them civilians. Millions became homeless refugees. The discovery of the Nazi death camps shocked the world and led to the Nuremberg trials. Nazi leaders were held accountable for crimes against humanity. In 1945, world leaders created a new organization, the United Nations. Germany was divided into 4 zones. This division led to 2 separate German states, West Germany and East Germany. Many colonies in Africa and Asia fought for and won independence. The era of European dominance ended and 2 superpowers rose, the United States and the Soviet Union. The world split into 2 opposing blocs and a long period of political tension, the Cold War, followed. While imperfect, the UN remains a central part of our global system today. By exploring the causes, the key events, and the final outcome of World War II, we can better understand the forces that have shaped our modern world and the lessons we must never forget.